Sarah Chen stood in the lobby of the luxury hotel in Lagos, her designer heels clicking against marble floors. When she saw the elderly man crying near the entrance, blocking her path to an important meeting, she did something unthinkable. "Move, old man," she shouted, actually kicking his worn shoes. "Some of us have real jobs." The lobby went silent. Then the glass doors opened, and Victor Okafor walked in, billionaire tech mogul, owner of the hotel chain, and the man Sarah was supposed to impress in her meeting. His eyes locked onto hers with recognition. Not because she was the marketing executive he was about to meet, but because the crying old man she had just assaulted was his father. What happened in the next 48 hours would change everything Sarah thought she knew about success, family, and the price of cruelty. Before we begin, smash that subscribe button and turn on notifications. This story will leave you speechless. Hello, welcome to African Tale by Natasha. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and share it with your friends, and most important thing, turn your notification bell so you can get informed when I dropped another amazing story. Drop your thoughts and reactions in the comments. What would you do if your spouse tried to kill you and you survive? Will you take a revenge or disappear forever? Sarah Chen had worked her entire adult life for this moment. At 32 years old, she was the youngest senior marketing executive at Global Reach Advertising in Lagos. She had clawed her way up from an entry-level position, working 80-hour weeks, sacrificing relationships and friendships, all for the corner office and the 7-figure salary. This Tuesday morning was supposed to be her crowning achievement. Victor Okafor's tech empire, Novatech Industries, was looking for a new agency to handle their global rebranding worth $500 million. Sarah's pitch had made it to the final 3 presentations. If she won this account, she would become the youngest executive to make partner at Global Reach. She had prepared for 6 weeks straight. Her presentation was flawless, every slide perfected, every talking point memorized. She knew Okafor's business inside and out. His company specialized in renewable energy technology and had operations across 15 African countries and 40 international markets. What Sarah didn't know was anything about the man himself. She hadn't bothered researching his personal life, his values, or his background. Numbers and profit margins were all that mattered. That oversight would cost her everything. Sarah's alarm went off at 5 a.m. She had her routine down to a science: 30-minute workout, protein shake, shower, makeup applied with precision, power suit pressed and ready. By 7 a.m., she was in her Mercedes, fighting Lagos traffic toward the Meridian Grand Hotel in Victoria Island, where the presentation would take place at 9 a.m. sharp. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages from her team, last-minute details and nervous questions. Sarah responded to each one with cold efficiency. Stick to the script. Don't improvise. We win this by being perfect. Her assistant Grace, a sweet 24-year-old fresh from university, sent a message that made Sarah frown. "Ma, I was reading about Mr. Okafor last night. Did you know he built his first company from nothing? His father was a taxi driver who sold everything to send him to school. It's a really inspiring story. Maybe we could reference it in the presentation." Sarah typed back quickly. "We're selling marketing strategy, not writing his biography. Focus on the numbers. That's what matters." Grace didn't respond, and Sarah didn't care. Sentiment was weakness in business. She had learned that lesson the hard way years ago when her own father had asked her for a loan to save his failing restaurant. Sarah had refused, telling him that throwing money at a dying business was foolish. The restaurant closed 3 months later. Her father barely spoke to her now, but Sarah told herself she had made the right choice. Business was business. By 8:30 a.m., Sarah pulled into the Meridian Grand's underground parking garage. The hotel was spectacular, gleaming glass and steel, a monument to luxury and success. Novatech Industries owned the entire chain of Meridian hotels across Africa. This was Okafor's empire, and Sarah was about to convince him to let her help expand it. She grabbed her leather portfolio and headed for the elevator, her mind racing through the presentation one final time. The lobby was already busy with hotel guests and business travelers. Sarah strode through with purpose, her eyes fixed on the conference wing where the meeting would take place. That's when she saw him. An elderly man, probably in his 70s, sat on a bench near the main entrance. He wore simple clothes, clean but clearly worn many times, the kind of outfit that spoke of modest means. His face was buried in his hands, and his shoulders shook with quiet sobs. A few hotel guests glanced at him uncomfortably but kept walking. Sarah's path took her directly past the bench. She checked her watch. 8:42 a.m. 18 minutes until the most important meeting of her life. The old man's crying was getting louder, his distress evident. He suddenly stood up, swaying slightly, and stepped directly into Sarah's path. "Please," he said in Yoruba-accented English, his voice thick with tears. "My son. I cannot find my son. They say he works here, but I don't work here," Sarah snapped, trying to step around him. "Ask security." But the old man, disoriented by his distress, shifted the same direction, still blocking her path. His hand reached out, perhaps to steady himself or to plead for help. Sarah felt his fingers brush her expensive suit jacket. Something inside her snapped. The pressure of the presentation, the years of fighting for every advantage, the ingrained belief that weakness deserved no mercy, it all erupted in a moment of shocking cruelty. "Get out of my way," Sarah shouted, loud enough that heads turned throughout the lobby. "Move, old man." She actually kicked at his worn shoes, not hard enough to injure but enough to send a clear message of contempt. Some of us have real jobs. Some of us actually contribute to society instead of begging for handouts. The old man stumbled backward, shock and hurt spreading across his weathered face. He almost fell but caught himself on the bench. The lobby had gone completely silent. Everyone was staring at Sarah. She didn't care. She stepped around the old man and continued toward the conference wing, her heart pounding with adrenaline and anger. Behind her, she heard a security guard approaching the elderly man, asking if he was all right. Sarah reached the conference corridor and paused to collect herself. She checked her reflection in a decorative mirror, smoothed her jacket, and took 3 deep breaths. The incident with the old man already fading from her mind. She had more important things to focus on. Conference room A was at the end of the hall. Through the glass walls, Sarah could see her team setting up the presentation equipment. Grace looked up and waved nervously. Sarah pushed through the doors, her professional smile fixed in place. "Status check," she commanded. "Are we ready?" "All set, Ma," Grace replied. "The screen is working perfectly, and we've tested all the transitions. Mr. Okafor should be here any." The door opened behind them. Sarah turned, her pitch-ready smile in place, expecting to see Okafor's assistant or perhaps members of his executive team. Instead, Victor Okafor himself walked in. He was tall, probably 6'3", with the kind of presence that commanded attention without effort. At 54, his hair was beginning to gray at the temples, which only added to his distinguished appearance. He wore an impeccably tailored navy suit and carried himself with quiet confidence. But it was his eyes that struck Sarah, dark, intelligent, and at this moment, burning with barely controlled fury. Behind him, supported by a security guard and what appeared to be a hotel doctor, walked the old man from the lobby. The one Sarah had just kicked and humiliated in front of dozens of witnesses. The conference room felt like it was shrinking. Sarah's carefully prepared smile froze on her face as she watched Victor Okafor guide the elderly man to a chair. The old man was still trembling slightly, his eyes red from crying, and when he looked up at Sarah, there was no anger in his gaze, only hurt confusion, as if he couldn't understand what he had done to deserve such treatment. "Dad, are you sure you're okay?" Victor's voice was gentle as he knelt beside his father's chair. "The doctor is here. Let him check your blood pressure." The word "Dad" hit Sarah like a physical blow. Her leather portfolio slipped from her fingers and hit the polished floor with a loud smack that made everyone in the room jump. Grace gasped softly. The other 2 members of Sarah's team stood frozen, their faces pale with dawning horror. Victor Okafor stood slowly and turned to face Sarah. When he spoke, his voice was controlled, but she could hear the steel underneath. Ms. Chen, I presume? We were scheduled to meet under very different circumstances. Sarah's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her mind was racing, trying to calculate how to salvage this disaster, but she was coming up blank. This couldn't be happening. This couldn't be real. Mr. Okafor, she finally managed, her voice sounding strange and distant to her own ears. I didn't realize. Didn't realize what? Victor asked, his tone sharp as a knife. Didn't realize that the elderly man you assaulted in my hotel lobby was a human being who deserved basic respect? Or didn't realize he was my father, and therefore someone whose mistreatment might have consequences for you? Sarah felt her face burning. The entire room was watching her, and she could see the judgment in every pair of eyes. Grace looked like she might cry. The security guard who had helped Victor's father stood by the door, his expression carefully neutral but his disgust evident. I apologize, Sarah said, forcing the words out. I was stressed about this meeting, and I reacted poorly. I shouldn't have. Reacted poorly? Victor's voice rose slightly. You kicked an elderly man. You called him useless. You suggested he was a beggar who didn't contribute to society. He paused, and his next words were delivered with devastating precision. Do you know who this man is, Ms. Chen? Beyond being my father. Sarah shook her head mutely. This is Joseph Okafor, Victor said, placing a protective hand on his father's shoulder. For 40 years, he drove a taxi in Lagos. He worked 16-hour days, 7 days a week, to send me to school. When I got accepted to university, he sold his taxi, his only source of income, to pay my first year's tuition. He went hungry so I could eat. He wore the same clothes for years so I could have proper school uniforms. Victor's voice grew thicker with emotion. When I started my first tech company in a garage with nothing but a used computer and a dream, my father went back to driving, borrowing a friend's taxi, working those brutal hours again to give me seed money. Every naira I needed to keep that company alive while I built it, he found a way to provide. Sarah felt like she was going to be sick. The old man, Joseph, was watching his son speak, tears running down his weathered cheeks, but now they seemed to be tears of pride and love rather than pain. My father built everything I have, Victor continued. Not with business degrees or investment capital, but with his own sweat and sacrifice and unwavering belief in his son. And you, he turned his full attention back to Sarah, you looked at him and saw someone worthless. Someone who didn't deserve basic human dignity. I'm sorry, Sarah whispered. I'm truly sorry. If I had known. If you had known he was my father? Victor interrupted. That's what matters to you. Not that he was an elderly person in distress who deserved compassion. Not that he was a human being who deserved respect. Only that humiliating him might impact your business deal. Sarah had no answer. Because he was right. Even now, part of her mind was calculating whether this could be salvaged, whether the right words of apology might save the account. The honest truth was that if Joseph had been nobody, just a random old man with no connection to Victor Okafor, Sarah would have forgotten about him entirely by now. Grace stepped forward hesitantly. Mr. Okafor, sir? I'm Grace Adeyemi. I work with Ms. Chen. I want you to know that what happened in the lobby doesn't represent our whole team. We prepared a presentation about your company's values, about community investment and social responsibility. But I see now that we should have lived those values, not just talked about them. Victor looked at Grace with something that might have been approval. What's your role here, Ms. Adeyemi? I'm the junior researcher, sir. I handle data analysis and background research. And did you know about my father? About my background? Grace nodded. Yes, sir. I read about it last night. About how your father sacrificed everything for you, and how you've never forgotten where you came from. That's why Novatech has all those programs for underprivileged youth, isn't it? And why you invest in public transportation infrastructure. You're honoring your father's legacy. Victor's expression softened slightly. That's exactly right, Ms. Adeyemi. My father taught me that success means nothing if you use it to look down on others. He taught me that every person has value, regardless of their job or their bank account. He glanced at Sarah. Clearly, that's not a lesson everyone learns. The hotel doctor finished checking Joseph's vital signs and spoke quietly to Victor. His blood pressure is elevated, but that's understandable given the circumstances. He should rest. No serious injuries, just emotional distress. Thank you, Dr. Adewale, Victor said. He turned back to his father. Dad, let me take you upstairs to my suite. You can rest, and we'll have lunch together like we planned. Joseph Okafor finally spoke, his voice quiet but steady. She is the one you were meeting? For the big contract. Yes, Dad. But that's not happening now. Victor, Joseph said gently. I am okay. I am old, and sometimes the world is harsh. Don't lose business because... Dad, Victor interrupted firmly but lovingly. You taught me to build a business on principles, not just profit. I'm not going to hire someone who treats people the way Ms. Chen treated you. Not for $500 million. Not for any amount of money. Sarah found her voice again, desperation creeping in. Mr. Okafor, please. Give me a chance to make this right. Let me show you our presentation. We've worked so hard, and our strategy for Novatech is genuinely innovative. We can help your company. Help my company do what, Ms. Chen? Victor asked. Reach more customers? Increase brand recognition? Make more profit? He shook his head. My company's mission is to create technology that improves lives, starting with the people who need it most. How can I trust you to represent those values when you couldn't show basic kindness to an old man in distress? People make mistakes, Sarah argued, hearing the desperation in her own voice and hating it. I'm not a bad person. I was focused, stressed, and I acted without thinking. Haven't you ever made a mistake? Of course I have, Victor replied. But there's a difference between a mistake and a reflection of character. You didn't accidentally kick my father, Ms. Chen. You made a choice in that moment. You assessed him as worthless and treated him accordingly. That tells me everything I need to know about how your company makes decisions. Grace spoke up again, her voice shaking. Mr. Okafor, if I may. Ms. Chen doesn't represent all of us. The rest of the team worked incredibly hard on this presentation. Is there any way? Ms. Adeyemi, Victor said, not unkindly. I respect your loyalty to your colleagues. That speaks well of you. But I can't separate the team from its leadership. The tone of a company comes from the top. He paused. However, I'd like you to leave me your business card. Not for this contract, but for future consideration. Grace fumbled for her card, her hands shaking. Sarah watched this interaction with growing fury mixing with her panic. This junior assistant was being praised while Sarah's career crumbled around her. The injustice of it burned in her chest. This is ridiculous, Sarah said, her professional mask finally cracking completely. So I was rude to someone. So what? This is business, Mr. Okafor. You don't build a $3 billion empire by being nice to everyone. You built Novatech by being ruthless when necessary, by making hard decisions, by putting profit first. The room went dead silent. Even Grace looked shocked by Sarah's words. Victor Okafor studied Sarah for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but carried absolute authority. Is that what you think, Ms. Chen? That I built my success by being ruthless? By stepping on people? By treating human beings as obstacles to my goals? I think you did what successful people do, Sarah said, doubling down on her argument even though some part of her knew she was digging her own grave. You made tough choices. You prioritized results over feelings. That's how you win. No, Victor said flatly. That's how you lose everything that matters. Ms. Chen, this meeting is over. Security will escort you and your team from the building. The contract is going to one of the other firms. I'll be making my decision this afternoon. You're making a mistake, Sarah said, anger finally overtaking her fear. Our proposal is the best. The numbers prove it. You're letting emotion cloud your judgment. And you're letting ambition cloud your humanity, Victor replied. Get out of my hotel, Ms. Chen. And I suggest you take some time to think about what kind of person you want to be. Because right now, you're someone who kicks old men and thinks success justifies cruelty. That's not the kind of person anyone should want to work with. The elevator ride down from the conference floor felt like descending into hell. Sarah stood rigid in the corner while Grace and the other two team members, Marcus and Tund, clustered together on the opposite side, pointedly not looking at her. The security guard who had escorted them out stood by the control panel, his face carefully blank. Sarah's phone buzzed in her hand. Her boss, Richard Thornton, managing director of Global Reach Advertising. The message was brief. My office. Now. Of course, word had already reached him. In the age of smartphones and social media, disasters traveled at the speed of light. Sarah wouldn't be surprised if there was already video of the lobby incident circulating online. The elevator reached the parking garage level. The doors opened, and the security guard gestured for them to exit. Your vehicles are in sections C and E. You're no longer welcome on hotel property. If you return, you'll be charged with trespassing. Marcus and Tund hurried toward their cars without a word. Grace lingered for a moment, looking at Sarah with an expression that was part pity, part disappointment, and part something else. Maybe relief that she hadn't followed Sarah's example more closely over the past year. Ma, Grace said quietly, I hope you'll be okay. Don't patronize me, Sarah snapped. You got what you wanted, didn't you? Making yourself look good in front of Okafor while I took the fall. Grace's expression hardened. That's not fair, and you know it. I tried to warn you about researching Mr. Okafor's background. I tried to suggest adding a personal touch to the presentation. You shut me down every time because you thought only numbers mattered. And I was right about the numbers, Sarah shot back. Our proposal was superior. Okafor threw away a brilliant strategy because his feelings got hurt. No, Ma, Grace said with unusual firmness. Mr. Okafor made a decision based on values. Something you might want to think about. She turned and walked toward her small Honda, leaving Sarah alone in the cavernous garage. Sarah got into her Mercedes and sat there for a moment, hands gripping the steering wheel. Her entire body was shaking, with anger, with shame, with fear about what came next. The professional mask she had worn for so many years had shattered, and underneath it, she didn't like what she found. But she pushed those thoughts away. She had to focus on damage control. She had to find a way to salvage her career, to make Richard understand that this was a fluke, a momentary lapse that didn't reflect her overall value to the company. The drive to Global Reach's offices in Ikoyi took 30 minutes through morning traffic. Sarah used the time to prepare her arguments. She would acknowledge the mistake but emphasize all her past successes. She would point out that personal chemistry didn't negate strategic excellence. She would make Richard see that losing her would hurt the company more than losing one account. Global Reach occupied the top 5 floors of a modern office tower. Sarah had walked these halls with confidence for 8 years, building her reputation as the executive who always delivered results. Today, those same halls felt hostile. Colleagues who usually greeted her warmly now looked away or suddenly became very interested in their phones as she passed. Richard's office was at the far end of the executive floor. His assistant, Patricia, a woman who had always been friendly to Sarah, looked at her with obvious disapproval. He's waiting for you, Patricia said coldly. Go right in. Richard Thornton was 58, a British expatriate who had run Global Reach's African operations for 15 years. He was usually cheerful and diplomatic, skilled at managing both clients and employees with charm and tact. Today, his face was set in hard lines. Sit down, Sarah, he said without preamble. Sarah sat, her portfolio, still containing the presentation that would never be seen, clutched in her lap like a shield. Richard leaned back in his chair and steepled his fingers. I've had an interesting morning. First, I received a call from Victor Okafor himself, informing me that global reach was no longer being considered for the Novatech contract. Then I received an email from his legal team, detailing an incident in the Meridian Grand Lobby involving you and Mr. Okafor's elderly father. And then, he paused, his expression growing even grimmer, I started receiving links to social media posts featuring video of said incident. Sarah's stomach dropped. Video. Oh yes. Someone in that lobby had their phone out. The video shows you quite clearly kicking an elderly man and calling him useless. It's been viewed 200,000 times in the last 90 minutes. The comments are not kind. And they're connecting you to global reach. Richard, please, let me explain. Explain what? Richard's voice rose. Explain why you assaulted an elderly man. Explain why you humiliated someone's father in public. Explain why you single-handedly destroyed our chance at the biggest contract in company history. I didn't know who he was, Sarah said, hearing how weak it sounded even as the words left her mouth. I was stressed, focused on the meeting, and I reacted badly. But our proposal was still the strongest. If Okafor would just look past one incident. One incident. Richard stood up, his face reddening. Sarah, this isn't about one incident. This is about judgment. This is about character. What you did reveals something fundamental about how you see people, how you make decisions. And frankly, it makes me question every success you've had here. That's not fair, Sarah protested. I've brought in millions for this company. I've built relationships with dozens of major clients. One mistake shouldn't erase years of excellent work. You're right, Richard said, sitting back down heavily. It shouldn't. But it does, because this particular mistake reveals that maybe those successes came at a cost we weren't seeing. How many people did you step on to get those wins, Sarah? How many assistants did you berate? How many junior staff members did you humiliate? How many colleagues did you throw under the bus? Sarah opened her mouth to defend herself, but Richard held up a hand. Don't bother denying it. I've heard the stories over the years. I ignored them because you got results. That was my mistake, not just yours. I enabled your behavior by valuing profit over people. But this, he gestured at his computer screen where the video was presumably still playing, this I can't ignore. This is public. This damages our reputation. This makes us look like a company that tolerates cruelty. So what happens now? Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Richard was quiet for a long moment. As of now, you're suspended without pay pending a formal investigation. We'll be reviewing your conduct over the past several years, talking to colleagues and clients, and determining what consequences are appropriate. Best case scenario, you'll face a significant demotion and salary cut. Worst case, he didn't finish the sentence. You're firing me, Sarah said flatly. I'm giving the board time to decide your fate, Richard corrected. But Sarah, I'll be honest with you. The optics are terrible. We're already getting calls from other clients who are concerned about being associated with someone who behaved the way you did. If you were anyone else, I'd have terminated you immediately. But because of your history with the company, you're getting this investigation period. Use it wisely. Sarah stood on shaking legs. How long? The investigation will take 2 weeks. You'll be notified of the decision by email. Until then, you're not to contact any clients, you're not to come to the office, and you're not to speak to media under any circumstances. Do you understand? Sarah nodded mutely. She turned toward the door, each step feeling like she was wading through water. Sarah, Richard called as she reached for the door handle. She turned back. His expression had softened slightly. I hope you use these 2 weeks to really think about who you want to be. Because the person who kicked that old man this morning? That's not someone I recognize. That's not the smart, driven young woman I hired 8 years ago. Success changed you, and not for the better. Sarah left without responding. The walk through the office to the elevators felt endless. Every cubicle she passed, every conference room door, every familiar face, all of it felt contaminated now by shame and anger and a terrible, growing fear about her future. In the parking garage, Sarah sat in her car and finally let herself check social media. The video was everywhere. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. The hashtags #KickingGranny and #LagosExecutive were trending. The comments were brutal. Imagine being so heartless you kick an old man. This is what happens when people value money over humanity. Someone find out where this woman works. Companies need to know who they're employing. Update. She works for Global Reach Advertising and was trying to get a contract with Novatech. Victor Okafor, the son, shut her down hard. Victor Okafor is a real one for protecting his father. This woman deserves to lose everything. Sarah's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold her phone. Her Instagram account was being flooded with angry messages. Her LinkedIn was the same. Someone had even found her Facebook profile, which she thought was private, and was posting links to the video on her wall. Her phone rang. Her mother, calling from Port Harcourt where Sarah had grown up. Sarah almost didn't answer, but she knew her mother would just keep calling. Sarah, what is this video I'm seeing? Her mother's voice was tight with distress. People are sending it to me, saying it's you. Please tell me it's not true. Mom, I can't talk about this right now. You kicked an old man? You called him useless. Her mother's voice rose to a near shout, something she rarely did. How could you do something like that? How did I raise a daughter who would treat an elder so disrespectfully? Mom, you don't understand. I was under pressure. I had an important meeting. So because you had a meeting, you can abuse an old man? Would you kick your father like that? Would you kick me? The question hit Sarah like a slap. Of course not. Then why was it acceptable to kick someone else's father? Someone else's mother? Sarah, I taught you better than this. We may not have had money, but we had respect for people. Where did that girl go? Sarah felt tears burning in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. I have to go, Mom. Sarah, wait. Sarah hung up. She couldn't handle this conversation, couldn't handle the disappointment in her mother's voice. She started the car and drove, not sure where she was going, just needing to move. She ended up at a mall in Victoria Island, seeking refuge in the anonymity of crowds. But even there, she couldn't escape. As she walked through the shopping center, she saw people watching videos on their phones, shaking their heads in disgust. She heard snatches of conversation. So disrespectful. No excuse for that kind of behavior. Probably treats everyone like that. In a department store, Sarah caught sight of herself in a mirror. She looked polished and professional in her expensive suit, her makeup perfect, her hair styled immaculately. But her eyes told a different story. They looked haunted, desperate, lost. A young sales associate approached her. Good afternoon, Ma. Can I help you find anything? Sarah looked at the young woman, probably early 20s, working retail to pay for school or support her family. The kind of person Sarah would have dismissed as unimportant just this morning. No, Sarah said quietly. I'm just looking. But the truth was, she wasn't looking for clothes or accessories. She was looking for some reflection of the person she used to be before ambition had eaten away at her humanity. Before success had become her only measure of worth. Before she had become someone who could kick an elderly man and feel justified in doing it. Sarah didn't go home that night. She couldn't face her luxury apartment in Lekki Phase 1, the space she had filled with expensive furniture and art as proof of her success. Instead, she checked into a small hotel in Surulere, paying cash and using a fake name, desperate for anonymity. The hotel room was basic, clean but far from the luxury she usually demanded. Sarah sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall, Her phone face down beside her because she couldn't handle seeing any more messages or videos or comments. For the first time in years, she let herself think about how she had become this person. Sarah had grown up in Port Harcourt as the only child of teachers. Her parents, David and Rose Chen, had emigrated from Malaysia in their 20s, seeking better opportunities in Nigeria. They had found work at a private school and built a modest but comfortable life. Young Sarah had been bright, curious, and deeply empathetic. She volunteered at her church, helped her neighbors, and dreamed of becoming a doctor to help people who couldn't afford quality healthcare. Her parents had encouraged those dreams, working extra jobs to save for her university education. Everything changed when Sarah was 17. Her father had come home one day, his face gray with shock. The school had been bought by new owners who wanted to restructure. 20 teachers were being let go, including David. After 30 years of service, he was given 2 months' severance and a form letter thanking him for his dedication. Sarah had watched her father spiral into depression. He was 55, too old to easily find new work, too young to retire. He applied to dozens of schools, but none wanted to hire someone his age when they could get younger teachers for less money. Her mother tried to support them on her single salary, but it wasn't enough. They fell behind on rent. They cut back on everything: food, utilities, small luxuries they had once taken for granted. Sarah's university fund disappeared, used to keep them from being evicted. Sarah had watched her father become smaller, quieter, ashamed of his inability to provide. She had watched her mother work herself to exhaustion. And she had made herself a promise: this would never happen to her. She would never be vulnerable. She would never depend on anyone's mercy or charity. She would be so successful that no one could ever take away her security. That was the year Sarah's empathy began to die. She got a scholarship to the University of Lagos, studying marketing and business. But the scholarship didn't cover everything, so Sarah worked, waiting tables, tutoring, doing anything to make money. She studied ruthlessly, graduating top of her class not because she loved learning but because she understood that success was the only protection against the cruelty of the world. Her first job at Global Reach had been entry-level, making barely enough to afford a shared apartment in a rough neighborhood. Sarah had watched older colleagues get promotions while she worked twice as hard for half the recognition. She had watched managers pass over qualified candidates in favor of friends and family members. She had learned that merit mattered less than connections, that hard work wasn't always rewarded, that the world was fundamentally unfair. So Sarah had adapted. She became harder, colder, more ruthless. When a colleague's presentation failed because Sarah had forgotten to send important data, resulting in the colleague being passed over for promotion, Sarah felt only satisfaction. That was one less person competing for the advancement she needed. When a junior staff member had come to her crying about personal problems that were affecting her work, Sarah had reported her to HR as unreliable. The young woman was fired, but Sarah got her accounts and the commission that came with them. When a competitor had made a mistake in a client pitch, Sarah had exploited it mercilessly, spreading rumors about the firm's incompetence, ensuring they lost not just that client but several others. Business was war, and Sarah had learned to fight without mercy. Every ruthless act, every betrayal, every moment of calculated cruelty had been justified in Sarah's mind by one simple truth: it was working. She was climbing the ladder. She was making money. She was building security. She was never going to end up like her father, broken and helpless. But sitting in that hotel room, Sarah couldn't shake the image of Joseph O. Kaffer's face. The hurt and confusion in his eyes. The way he had trembled when she kicked him. The quiet dignity with which he had accepted his son's care afterward. For the first time in years, Sarah felt something other than anger or ambition. She felt shame. Her phone buzzed. Against her better judgment, she picked it up. A message from her father. "Sarah, your mother told me about the video. I watched it. I'm not going to lecture you, you're an adult, and you'll face whatever consequences come. But I want you to know something. When I lost my job and felt like a failure, the thing that hurt most wasn't the money or the unemployment. It was feeling like I had lost my value as a person. Like I didn't matter anymore because I couldn't provide. That's what you made that old man feel today. You made him feel worthless. I hope you never have to feel that way. But I also hope you understand what you did. Sarah read the message 3 times. Her father rarely said much. He had become quieter over the years, his early depression leaving a lasting mark. For him to reach out now to say these things meant something. She thought about calling him but couldn't find the words. What could she say? How could she explain that she had become exactly the kind of person who had hurt him? Someone who valued people only for what they could provide, who saw human beings as either useful or obstacles. Sarah spent the next 3 days in that hotel room, leaving only to buy food from a nearby restaurant. She ignored calls from friends, though there were fewer than she had realized, most of her relationships being work-related and superficial. She watched the video of herself over and over, forcing herself to see what others saw. The woman in that video looked like a monster. Cold, cruel, entitled. The way she had spoken to Joseph, the contempt in her voice, the casual violence of that kick. It was horrifying. This was how people saw her now. This was who she had become. On the 4th day, Sarah finally ventured out for a longer walk. She ended up in a public park, watching families play with their children, elderly couples sitting together on benches, young people laughing with friends. Normal people living normal lives, finding joy in simple things. She noticed an old man sitting alone on a bench, feeding pigeons from a paper bag. He was around Joseph's age, wearing similar modest clothes. Sarah watched him for a long time, thinking about how she would have perceived him just days ago. Invisible, unimportant, someone to walk past without a second thought. But now she wondered about his life. Did he have children who loved him? Grandchildren? What had he done for work? What sacrifices had he made for his family? What dreams had he held when he was young? What wisdom had he gained over 7 or 8 decades of living? The old man noticed her watching and smiled, a warm, genuine smile. "Beautiful day," he said in Yoruba. "Yes," Sarah replied in the same language. "Beautiful. You look troubled, young lady. Heavy thoughts." Sarah almost walked away. This was exactly the kind of interaction she would have avoided before, unwilling to waste time on meaningless pleasantries with strangers. But something made her stay. "I did something terrible," she heard herself say. "I hurt someone who didn't deserve it. And now I'm trying to figure out how to live with that." The old man nodded slowly. "Ah, that's a heavy burden. But at least you're carrying it. Some people hurt others and never feel the weight. I don't know how to make it right. Can you apologize to the person you hurt?" "I tried. Sort of. But it wasn't a real apology. It was more about trying to save my career than actually being sorry." "Well," the old man said, throwing the last of his birdseed to the gathering pigeons, "maybe you start by being truly sorry. Not sorry you got caught or sorry there are consequences. Sorry for the pain you caused. That's where change begins, with genuine remorse." He stood up, his movements slow and careful. "I hope you find your way, young lady. We all make mistakes. What matters is what we do after." Sarah watched him walk away, his words settling into her mind like seeds in soil. Genuine remorse. Not just fear of consequences or anger at getting caught, but real, deep sorrow for the harm she had caused. When was the last time she had felt that about anything? She pulled out her phone and looked at Victor Okafor's LinkedIn profile. There was a contact button, but she hesitated. What could she say? What words could possibly convey what she needed to express? Instead, Sarah searched for information about Joseph Okafor. There wasn't much. He wasn't famous or wealthy, just an ordinary man who had lived an extraordinary life of sacrifice for his son. She found an old newspaper article about Victor's first company, which mentioned in passing that his father had sold his taxi to provide seed funding. That taxi had been Joseph's livelihood. He had given up his only source of income, his only asset, to bet on his son's dream. And he had done it not expecting anything in return, but simply because he loved his son and believed in him. Sarah had never done anything remotely that selfless. Every act of generosity in her life had been calculated, transactional. She gave to charity for the tax deduction and the social prestige. She helped colleagues when it benefited her. She maintained relationships only as long as they were useful. Her phone rang. Richard Thornton. Sarah answered with trepidation. "Sarah, the board has accelerated their decision," Richard said without preamble. "Given the continued media coverage and the number of clients expressing concerns, they've decided we can't wait 2 weeks. The investigation is concluded." Sarah's heart hammered. "And you're terminated, effective immediately. Your final paycheck will include 2 weeks severance, which is more generous than you deserve given the circumstances. HR will send you paperwork about transitioning your accounts to other executives. You're not to contact any global reach clients or speak publicly about the company. Is that clear?" "Crystal clear," Sarah said, surprised by how calm her voice sounded. "For what it's worth," Richard added, "I did argue for a suspension instead of termination. But I was outvoted. The board feels that keeping you on staff, even in a reduced capacity, sends the wrong message to clients and employees. I'm sorry, Sarah. I really thought you'd be partner someday." "So did I," Sarah said quietly. After he hung up, Sarah sat in the park for another hour, letting the reality sink in. She had been fired. Her career at Global Reach, 8 years of climbing and fighting and sacrificing, was over. The reputation she had built was destroyed. The success she had achieved had evaporated in one terrible moment of cruelty. And the worst part? She deserved it. That evening, Sarah finally checked her bank accounts and did the math. She had money saved, more than most people would earn in several years. But Lagos was expensive, and without a job, those savings would drain quickly. Her lifestyle had always matched her income, and she had never thought about what would happen if that income disappeared. She thought about her father, sitting jobless at 55, watching his savings disappear while the world told him he was too old, too expensive, too unnecessary. Now Sarah understood, just a little bit, how that must have felt. But her father had faced his struggle with dignity. He hadn't lashed out at others or blamed innocent people for his circumstances. He had quietly endured, supported by his wife and daughter, until he eventually found work again. Different work, less prestigious, but honest work that let him regain some sense of purpose. Sarah had lost her job because she had been cruel. Her father had lost his because the world was sometimes unfair to good people. The difference felt important. 3 weeks after being fired, Sarah's savings account told a story she hadn't wanted to face. Her luxury apartment rent was 800,000 naira per month. Her car payment was another 200,000. Insurance, utilities, the lifestyle she had built around her executive salary, it all required money she was no longer making. She had applied to 17 different marketing firms and advertising agencies. Some never responded. Others sent polite rejection emails. 2 called her in for interviews that felt more like interventions, where hiring managers asked pointed questions about the incident and her approach to professional conduct. The video had over 3 million views now. It had been picked up by international media outlets as an example of toxic corporate culture and the dehumanization of success. Sarah's face was recognizable. Her name was searchable. She had become a cautionary tale. By the end of the first month, Sarah had moved out of her luxury apartment and into a modest 1-bedroom in Yaba. She sold her Mercedes and bought a used Honda. She sold most of her designer clothes and expensive accessories, keeping only what she needed for job interviews that never seemed to lead anywhere. Her parents had offered to help financially, but Sarah couldn't bring herself to accept. Her father was 73 now, retired and living on pension. The idea of taking money from the man she had spent years pitying for his lack of success felt like the ultimate defeat. Instead, Sarah did something she never thought she'd do. She took a job at a small, struggling marketing consultancy that desperately needed someone with her skills and was willing to look past her reputation. The pay was a fraction of what she had earned at Global Reach. The office was cramped and poorly air-conditioned. Her colleagues were mostly junior people fresh from university, who looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and judgment. But it was work. And work meant survival. Her new boss, Chidi Okonkwo, was a 45-year-old man who had started his own firm after being passed over for partnership at a larger company. He was brilliant but disorganized, passionate about good work but terrible at business development. His company was barely staying afloat. On Sarah's first day, Chidi called her into his cluttered office. "I'm going to be direct with you, Sarah. I saw the video. Everyone has. I hired you anyway because I believe people deserve second chances, and because, frankly, I need someone with your skills. But if you bring that attitude into this office, if you treat anyone here the way you treated that old man, you're gone immediately. Are we clear?" "Crystal clear," Sarah said. "Thank you for the opportunity." "Don't thank me yet," Chidi said with a wry smile. "You might regret taking this job once you see how much work needs to be done around here. We're drowning, Sarah. I need someone who can help us swim. Can you do that?" "I can try." Over the next few weeks, Sarah threw herself into work at Okonkwo Consulting. She reorganized their client management system. She updated their pitch materials. She identified potential clients and helped develop strategies to reach them. She worked long hours, arriving early and staying late, driven partly by professional pride but mostly by the need to prove, to Chidi, to herself, to the world, that she was more than that moment in the hotel lobby. But the old Sarah, the ruthless climber, kept trying to emerge. During a team meeting, a junior consultant named Blessing presented an idea for a social media campaign. It was naive and poorly thought out, the kind of thing Sarah would have once torn apart publicly to establish dominance. She felt the cutting remarks forming in her mind, the easy cruelty that had always come so naturally. But then she remembered the old man in the park, his words about genuine remorse and change. She thought about Joseph Okafor's face. "Blessing," Sarah said carefully, "I think your enthusiasm is great, but let's workshop this idea. What if we approached it from this angle instead?" She spent 15 minutes helping Blessing develop the concept into something workable, offering suggestions rather than criticism, building up rather than tearing down. After the meeting, Blessing approached Sarah's desk. "Thank you, Ma. I was nervous to present in front of you. Everyone knows you used to be a senior executive at Global Reach. I thought you'd think my ideas were stupid." "They're not stupid," Sarah said. "They just need refinement. We all started somewhere, right?" It was a small moment, barely worth noting. But it felt significant to Sarah, a conscious choice to be different, to be better. 2 months into her new job, Chidi called Sarah into his office again. He looked stressed, and Sarah's heart sank. Was she being fired again? "We have a problem," Chidi said. "Do you remember that pitch we did to Zenith Foods 3 weeks ago?" Sarah nodded. Zenith Foods was a mid-sized company that made packaged snacks. Landing them as a client would be huge for Okonkwo Consulting. "We got the account," Chidi said, and Sarah's heart leaped. "But there's a catch. The marketing director wants to meet with the team lead before signing the contract. She specifically asked to meet with you." "Why me?" "Because she knows who you are. She saw the video. And she wants to talk to you about it before she trusts us with her company's reputation." Sarah felt her stomach drop. "What do I say to her?" "The truth," Chidi said simply. "Whatever that is for you. But Sarah, we need this account. If we don't land a few more clients soon, I'm going to have to close the business and let everyone go. So figure out what your truth is, and make it convincing." The meeting with Zenith Foods marketing director, Amokan Wosu, was scheduled for the following Monday. Sarah spent the weekend preparing, but this wasn't like preparing for a pitch. She couldn't rehearse answers or memorize talking points. Amoka wanted to see who Sarah really was, and Sarah was still figuring that out herself. Monday morning arrived too quickly. Sarah wore one of her remaining good suits, though it felt different now, less like armor and more like a costume. She took public transport to the meeting instead of driving, something she would have considered beneath her just months ago. Zenith Foods' offices were modern but unpretentious, much like the company itself. Amoka met Sarah in a small conference room. She was about 40, professionally dressed, with intelligent eyes that seemed to see right through any facade. "Ms. Chen," Amoka said, gesturing to a chair. "Thank you for coming. I'll get straight to the point. I've reviewed your firm's proposal. It's excellent, detailed, creative, exactly what we need. But I have concerns about working with you specifically." "Because of the video," Sarah said quietly. "Yes. That video shows someone who treats people with contempt. Someone who sees others as beneath them. Zenith Foods is a family company. We value respect, integrity, human dignity. How can I trust that your values align with ours?" Sarah took a deep breath. This was the moment to deliver a polished corporate apology, to say all the right things about learning and growth and moving forward. But looking at Amoka's expectant face, Sarah knew that wouldn't be enough. The truth was messier, more painful, but it was all she had. "I can't promise that my values align with yours," Sarah began, and Amoka's eyebrows rose in surprise. "The truth is, for years, I didn't really have values beyond ambition and success. I grew up watching my father struggle after losing his job, and I promised myself I'd never be vulnerable like that. So I became hard, ruthless, willing to do whatever it took to climb the ladder. I told myself that success justified everything." Sarah paused, gathering her thoughts. "That video shows exactly who I had become, someone who looked at an elderly man in distress and saw only an obstacle to my goals. Someone who could kick another human being and feel justified in doing it because I was important and he wasn't. I was wrong. Profoundly, inexcusably wrong." "And now?" Amoka asked. "Are you different now?" "I'm trying to be," Sarah said honestly. "Every day I'm trying to make different choices. To see people as people, not as useful or useless. To build others up instead of tearing them down. To value kindness and integrity alongside competence. But I'm not going to pretend it's easy or that I've completely changed. I spent years becoming someone cruel, and unlearning that is a process." "Why should I believe you're capable of change?" Sarah thought about the question carefully. "Because I've lost everything that mattered to me. My job, my reputation, my sense of self-worth. And in losing those things, I've started to discover what actually matters. It's not corner offices or six-figure salaries or being the youngest executive to make partner. It's treating people with dignity. It's using whatever skills I have to help others, not just to advance myself. It's being someone my parents can be proud of, not because of my job title but because of my character." Amoka was quiet for a long moment, studying Sarah's face. "You know what impressed me most about your firm's proposal? It wasn't just the strategy, though that was good. It was the research about our company values, about our community programs and our commitment to ethical sourcing. That research was done by a young woman named Blessing. When I called to verify some details, she told me you had helped her develop it. She said you were patient and encouraging, nothing like she expected from someone with your background." Sarah felt something warm bloom in her chest. Pride, but a different kind than she had felt before. Blessing is talented. She just needed someone to believe in her ideas. "Did you have someone who believed in your ideas when you were starting out?" Amoka asked. Sarah thought back to her early days at Global Reach. "No. I had bosses who exploited my work and took credit for my ideas. I had colleagues who saw me as competition to eliminate. I learned to be ruthless because that's what I thought success required." "And now you're trying to be different. To break that cycle." "Yes." Amoka nodded slowly. "All right, Ms. Chen. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to give your firm this account. But I'm assigning you as the team lead with one condition. Every month, you're going to mentor one of our junior marketing staff. You're going to teach them what you know without tearing them down, without making them feel small, without turning them into someone like you used to be. Can you do that?" Yes, Sarah said, meaning it. I can do that. They shook hands, and as Sarah left the building, she felt something she hadn't experienced in months. Hope. Not hope that she could reclaim her old life. That was gone, and maybe it needed to be. But hope that she could build something new, something better, something that wouldn't crumble at the first sign of trouble because it was built on actual values rather than ambition alone. That evening, Sarah sat at her small kitchen table in her modest apartment and did something she had never done before. She wrote a letter. Not an email, not a text, not a LinkedIn message, but an actual handwritten letter on simple paper. Dear Mr. Joseph Okafor, I don't expect you to read this. I don't expect you to forgive me. I'm writing this because I need to say things that I should have said 3 months ago when your son brought you to that conference room. I'm sorry. Not sorry that there were consequences for my actions, though there have been many. Not sorry that I got caught, though the video has been seen by millions. I'm sorry for the pain I caused you. For the moment when I looked at you, an elderly man in distress, and saw only an obstacle to what I wanted. For the words I said that made you feel worthless. For physically assaulting you. For the humiliation I caused in that public space. There's no excuse for what I did. I could tell you about my own struggles, about losing my career and reputation, about learning hard lessons. But none of that erases the fact that I hurt you. None of that undoes those terrible moments in the hotel lobby. I've thought a lot about what your son told me that day, about your sacrifices for him, about selling your taxi to fund his dreams, about working brutal hours to give him opportunities. You built something beautiful with your life. A son who honors you, who protects you, who never forgot where he came from. I destroyed something precious that day when I treated you with such contempt. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm just asking you to know that I see my wrong clearly now. I see you as you truly are, a man of dignity and sacrifice who deserved kindness, not cruelty. And I'm deeply, profoundly sorry that I was the person who failed to give you that kindness when you needed it. With sincere remorse. Sarah Chen. Sarah read the letter 3 times, changing nothing. It wasn't eloquent or polished. It didn't try to explain away her actions or present herself in a better light. It was just honest. The next morning, Sarah took the letter to a stationery shop and had it placed in a simple envelope. She looked up the address for Novatech Industries' main office and mailed it, knowing it might never reach Joseph, knowing that even if it did, he might throw it away unread. But she sent it anyway, because the apology wasn't really about getting a response. It was about finally taking responsibility without calculation, without hoping for benefit, without expecting anything in return. 2 weeks passed. Sarah threw herself into work at Okonkwo Consulting. The Zenith Foods account was going well. True to her promise to Amoka, Sarah was mentoring a young woman named Chioma from Zenith's marketing department every Thursday afternoon. Chioma was bright and eager, reminding Sarah of who she herself might have been if she had taken a different path. During one session, Chioma asked, "Ma, how did you become so successful at such a young age? What's the secret?" Sarah thought about how she would have answered that question 6 months ago. She would have talked about working harder than everyone else, about being ruthless with competition, about never letting sentiment interfere with ambition. She would have presented her climb up the corporate ladder as a template for success. The honest answer, Sarah said. I became successful by treating people badly and prioritizing results over relationships. And I lost everything because of it. So maybe the question isn't how to become successful quickly. Maybe it's how to build success that lasts, that you can be proud of, that doesn't require you to become someone you hate. Chioma looked surprised. But you were a senior executive at Global Reach. You managed huge accounts. And I was miserable, Sarah said. I had money and status and a corner office, but I had no real friends. My family was disappointed in me. I looked in the mirror and saw a stranger. That's not success, Chioma. That's just well-paid emptiness. So what is success? Sarah thought about the question. I'm still figuring that out. But I think it's about being someone you respect. About treating people well and still achieving your goals. About building things that matter, not just things that look impressive. About knowing that if everything were taken away tomorrow, you'd still be okay because your worth doesn't come from your job title or your salary. Chioma nodded thoughtfully. Is that why you wrote to Mr. Okafor? My boss told me you sent him a letter. Sarah's heart skipped. She did. Yes. Ms. Nwosu knows the Okafor family. She mentioned it when she was telling me about you, about why she decided to work with you despite everything. I wrote the letter because it was the right thing to do, Sarah said. Whether he reads it or responds doesn't matter. I needed to take responsibility. 3 days later, Sarah received an unexpected phone call on her mobile. The number was unfamiliar. Hello, Ms. Chen. The voice was deep, measured, belonging to someone used to authority. This is Victor Okafor. Sarah's breath caught. Mr. Okafor. I didn't expect to hear from you. My father received your letter, Victor said. He wanted me to call you. How is he? He's well. The incident didn't cause any lasting physical harm. Emotionally. Victor paused. It affected him, as you might imagine. But he's resilient. He's been through much worse in his life. I'm so sorry, Sarah said, the words feeling inadequate even as she spoke them. I know sorry doesn't undo what happened, but I need you to know that I mean it. Not because I want something from you, but because it's true. Why did you write to him? Victor asked. The letter wasn't addressed to me or my company. You sent it directly to my father, care of our offices. Why? Because he's the person I hurt. Not Novatech Industries. Not your business reputation. Joseph. Your father. He's the one who deserved the apology. Victor was quiet for a moment. That's what my father said. He said your letter was different from the apologies you offered that day in the conference room. He said those were about protecting yourself. This one, he said, was about acknowledging him. Your father is right. He wants to meet with you, Victor said, and Sarah's heart nearly stopped. Before you answer, I need to be clear. I'm not comfortable with this. I don't trust you. I think you're capable of exactly the cruelty you displayed that day. But my father asked me to arrange this meeting, and I've learned over 54 years not to ignore his requests. So I'm calling. The decision is yours. Sarah's mind raced. The idea of facing Joseph Okafor again terrified her. But if he was willing to meet, willing to give her a chance to apologize properly, how could she refuse? I'd be honored to meet with him, Sarah said. Whatever time and place is convenient for him. Saturday at 2 p.m. There's a small restaurant in Suralere called Mama F's Kitchen. It's where my father has lunch most Saturdays. He says neutral ground would be better than my office or your home. Does that work? Yes. Thank you, Mr. Okafor. And thank you for calling even though you don't trust me. I know that must have been difficult. My father taught me that forgiveness isn't about excusing wrong. It's about freeing yourself from the burden of anger. I'm not there yet. But my father is wiser than I am about these things. Saturday at 2 p.m., Ms. Chen. Don't be late, and don't disappoint him again. The line went dead. Sarah sat with her phone in her hand, her heart pounding. 3 months ago, if someone had told her she'd be terrified about meeting an elderly stranger for lunch, she would have laughed. But this meeting mattered more than any client pitch she had ever prepared for. This was about redemption, or at least the possibility of it. Saturday came too quickly and too slowly. Sarah barely slept Friday night, running through possible conversations in her mind, trying to prepare for something that couldn't really be prepared for. She chose her clothes carefully, not too formal, not too casual, nothing that screamed executive or tried too hard. Simple black pants and a modest blue blouse. No expensive jewelry, no designer accessories. She wanted Joseph to see her as a person, not as the corporate robot who had kicked him. Mama F's Kitchen was a small local restaurant in a neighborhood that Sarah would have never visited during her Global Reach days. It served traditional Nigerian food and was packed with families enjoying Saturday lunch. The smell of jollof rice and grilled fish filled the air, and the sound of Afrobeats played from speakers over friendly conversation. Sarah arrived 15 minutes early, a habit from her corporate days that she couldn't shake. She got a table in the corner and ordered water, her stomach too tight to consider food. At exactly 2 p.m., Joseph Okafor walked in. He wore casual clothes, nice slacks and a button-down shirt, and moved with the careful dignity of someone who had learned to navigate the world with grace despite its hardships. He spotted Sarah and walked over, his expression unreadable. Sarah stood immediately. "Mr. Okafor. Thank you for agreeing to meet me." Joseph gestured for her to sit. "Please. No need for formality." His voice was gentle, without accusation or anger. "Thank you for coming." A waiter came by, and Joseph ordered umla and yudu soup, asking if Sarah wanted anything. She ordered the same, though she doubted she could eat. For a moment, they sat in silence. Sarah searched for the right words, but everything she had prepared felt hollow. "Your letter surprised me," Joseph finally said. "Not because you wrote, but because of what you wrote. It was honest. It asked for nothing. That's rare." "I meant every word," Sarah said. "Mr. Okafor, what I did to you was inexcusable. I've spent 3 months trying to understand how I became someone capable of that cruelty, and I'm still working it out. But I want you to know that it haunts me. Your face that day, the hurt in your eyes. I see it every time I close my eyes. And I'm so sorry." Joseph studied her for a long moment. "Tell me, Sarah, may I call you Sarah?" "Of course. Tell me, Sarah, why were you so angry that day? What made you kick an old man instead of simply walking around him?" Sarah looked at Joseph's weathered face, at the genuine curiosity in his eyes. He wasn't asking to judge her or to make her feel worse. He wanted to understand. That somehow made answering harder. "I was angry at everything," Sarah said slowly. "At myself, mostly. I had spent 6 weeks preparing for that presentation, and I needed it to be perfect. Not just good, perfect. Because if I won that account, I'd make partner. I'd finally have the security I'd been chasing for years." "Security," Joseph repeated thoughtfully. "What were you afraid of?" The question hit deeper than Sarah expected. "Ending up like my father," she admitted. "He was a teacher for 30 years. Good at his job, loved by students, dedicated to his work. Then new owners bought the school and fired him because he was too expensive. At 55, with no warning, his entire career was over. I watched him struggle to find work, watched him feel useless, watched my parents nearly lose everything. I was 17, and I promised myself I'd never be that vulnerable. Never depend on anyone's mercy. Never be disposable." "So you made yourself indispensable," Joseph said. "I tried. I worked harder than everyone else. I was ruthless about competition. I prioritized results over relationships. I told myself that success was the only protection against the cruelty of the world." Sarah paused, looking down at her hands. "But it didn't work. I achieved everything I thought I wanted, and I was miserable. And then I lost it all anyway because I had become exactly the kind of cruel person I was trying to protect myself from." Joseph nodded slowly. "I understand fear. I've lived with it for most of my life. Fear that I couldn't provide for my family. Fear that my children would grow up in poverty. Fear that my sacrifices wouldn't be enough." He smiled slightly. "But I learned something important. There's a difference between being driven by fear and being driven by love." "What's the difference?" "Fear makes you protect yourself at others' expense. Love makes you sacrifice yourself for others' benefit. Fear asks, what will I lose? Love asks, what can I give?" Fear builds walls. Love builds bridges. Their food arrived, the rich aroma of the soup filling the space between them. Joseph took a bite and closed his eyes appreciatively. Mama F makes the best umla in Lagos. My wife, God rest her soul, used to bring me here when we were courting. That was 45 years ago. You were married for a long time, Sarah said. 42 years. She died 3 years ago. Cancer. Joseph's voice carried grief but not bitterness. Those were the best years of my life. We didn't have much money, but we had love. We had purpose. We had each other. Your son clearly loves you very much. Joseph's face lit up. Victor is my greatest achievement. Not because he's rich or successful, though I'm proud of those things too, but because he's a good man. He treats people with dignity. He uses his success to help others. He never forgot where he came from or the sacrifices made for him. He sold his taxi, Sarah said, to fund your son's dream. That's incredible sacrifice. It wasn't sacrifice, Joseph corrected gently. It was investment. I was investing in my son's future, yes, but also in something bigger. Victor wanted to create technology that would improve lives in Africa. He wanted to prove that African companies could compete globally. That vision was worth more than one taxi. He paused. But I understand why it seems like sacrifice to you. You were taught that giving up something always means losing. I was taught that giving can mean gaining something greater. Sarah felt tears pricking her eyes. I don't know how to be that way. I don't know how to give without calculating what I'll get back. Then learn, Joseph said simply. You're young. You have time to become who you want to be instead of who you've been. But what if I can't change? What if I'm just fundamentally broken somehow? Joseph put down his spoon and looked at Sarah with sudden intensity. Let me tell you something. That day in the hotel lobby, when you kicked me, I felt many things. Pain, yes. Humiliation, certainly. But also pity. Pity. Sarah was surprised. Yes. Because I looked at your face, and I saw something I've seen before in Lagos streets, in poverty, in struggle. A person who has lost their humanity somewhere along the way. A person so desperate, so afraid, so hurt by the world that they've become hard to survive. I pitied you because I knew that someone who could do what you did must be suffering terribly inside, even if they don't know it. Sarah's tears spilled over. She tried to wipe them away discreetly, but Joseph saw. You're crying now. Deserve. Joseph shook his head. Grace isn't about deserving, Sarah. If we only gave kindness to those who deserved it, the world would be a very cold place. I'm being kind to you because that's who I choose to be, not because of who you are. They ate in silence for a few minutes. Sarah found she could actually taste the food now, the rich flavors grounding her in the moment. Your son said you wanted to meet me, Sarah finally said. Why? Most people would want nothing to do with me. Joseph wiped his mouth with a napkin. Because of your letter. And because I've been thinking about something my pastor said last Sunday. He talked about how we're all broken in different ways, and how judgment is easy but healing is hard. You broke me a little that day, Sarah. But you're broken too. Maybe more than I am. I don't know how to fix myself. You start by making different choices. One conversation at a time. One interaction at a time. One moment of choosing kindness over cruelty. He leaned forward. You want to know the truth? Forgiving you isn't really about you. It's about me not carrying anger that will poison my own heart. My son is still furious with you. He thinks I'm foolish for meeting you. But I've lived too long to waste my remaining years being bitter. So you forgive me? Sarah could hardly believe it. I'm working toward it, Joseph said carefully. Forgiveness is a process, not a switch I can flip. But I want to forgive you. I want to believe people can change. So I'm giving you a chance to prove it. How? What can I do? Joseph thought for a moment. Tell me about your father. The teacher who lost his job. What happened to him? Sarah hadn't expected that question. He struggled for 2 years. Couldn't find work. My mother supported us on her salary. Eventually he found a job at a smaller school for much less money. He teaches there still, though he'll retire soon. It's not what he dreamed of, but it's honest work. Do you talk to him? Not often. We're not close anymore. I disappointed him. Because when his restaurant business failed, he tried to start a small restaurant after his teaching job didn't work out. I refused to lend him money. I told him it was a bad investment. He lost everything. Joseph's expression shifted. How long ago was this? 5 years. And you haven't made it right? Sarah shook her head, shame flooding through her. I didn't think I needed to. I thought I had made a smart business decision. I thought he should have known better than to risk everything on a failing venture. But he's your father. Yes. And you had the money to help him. Yes. Joseph sat back. Sarah, if you want to change, if you want redemption, it doesn't start with me. It starts with your own family. The people you've hurt who loved you. The people you owe debts to that have nothing to do with money. The truth of his words hit Sarah like a wave. She had been so focused on apologizing to Joseph, on fixing the public disaster of the hotel incident, that she hadn't thought about the private disasters she had caused over years. The relationships she had destroyed. The people she had failed. I don't know if he'll forgive me, Sarah said. Then you do what I'm doing with you. You try. You show up. You admit you're wrong. You ask for nothing and hope for grace. Sarah nodded, wiping her eyes again. Mr. Okafor, thank you. For meeting me. For listening. For not hating me. I don't hate you, Sarah. I just want you to be better than you were. The world has enough cruelty. It needs more people choosing to be kind, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. They finished their meal, talking about smaller things. Joseph's love of football, Sarah's work at the small consultancy, the changing landscape of Lagos. By the time they left the restaurant, something had shifted. Not complete forgiveness, not yet. But the beginning of understanding. Outside, Joseph shook Sarah's hand. I hope you'll call your father soon. Don't wait. Time is precious, and pride is expensive. I will. I promise. Good. And Sarah. One more thing. Joseph's grip on her hand tightened slightly. That young woman who worked with you, Grace. The one who tried to defend your team to my son. I looked her up. She's working at a different agency now. You should reach out to her. Apologize for how you treated her. She deserved better. Sarah nodded, her throat tight. I will. She watched Joseph walk away, his posture straight despite his age, his steps measured and sure. He had every reason to hate her, but he had chosen Grace instead. Now it was her turn to choose. That evening, Sarah sat in her apartment with her phone in her hand, staring at her father's contact information. She hadn't called him in 8 months. Before that, their conversations had been brief and strained, filled with long silences and careful avoidance of anything meaningful. She pressed the call button before she could talk herself out of it. Her father answered on the 3rd ring. Sarah, is everything okay? The concern in his voice, immediate and genuine despite their distance, nearly broke her. Dad, I need to talk to you about something. About the restaurant. About the loan you asked for 5 years ago. There was a long pause. Sarah, that's ancient history. Water under the bridge. No, Dad, it's not. I was wrong. I had the money to help you, and I refused because I thought I was being smart, being rational. But I was just being cruel. I watched you lose everything and told myself it wasn't my responsibility. But you're my father. You sacrificed for me my whole life. And when you needed help, I turned my back. Her father's voice was thick when he spoke. I never blamed you for that, Sarah. It was my risk to take. My failure. But I blamed you, Sarah said, tears streaming down her face now. I blamed you for not being successful enough, for not protecting yourself better, for being vulnerable. And I was wrong, Dad. So wrong. You taught me about integrity and kindness and treating people with dignity. And I forgot all of it because I was so afraid of ending up like I thought you were. Like what? A failure, Sarah whispered. I saw you as a failure because you lost your job, because the restaurant didn't work out. And I was so terrified of being a failure too that I became something worse. I became cruel. Sarah, her father said gently, I'm not a failure. I lost a job, yes. I lost a business, yes. But I didn't lose what matters. I have your mother. I have my health. I have students who still write to thank me for changing their lives. I have a life of meaning, even if it's not impressive by the world's standards. I know that now. I'm starting to understand it. Sarah took a shaky breath. Dad, I want to pay you back. The money I should have loaned you 5 years ago, plus interest. I want to make it right. I don't need your money, Sarah. It's not about need. It's about what I owe you. Please, Dad, let me do this. There was silence on the line. Then, all right. But only if you promise me something. Anything. Come home for your mother's birthday next month. Come spend a weekend with us. Not to give us money or make grand gestures. Just to be our daughter again. To sit with us and talk and remember that family is more important than success. I promise, Sarah said. I'll be there. After they hung up, Sarah sat in the growing darkness of her apartment, feeling lighter than she had in years. The journey to redemption wasn't a single dramatic moment. It was a series of small choices, difficult conversations, and honest apologies. It was calling your father. It was thanking a colleague. It was showing up when it would be easier to hide. The next morning, Sarah searched for Grace Adeyemi on LinkedIn. She found her profile quickly. Grace had moved to Sterling Communications, a mid-sized agency with a good reputation. According to her profile, she had been promoted to marketing analyst. Sarah felt a surge of pride mixed with regret. Grace had succeeded despite working under Sarah's toxic leadership, not because of it. Sarah typed a message, deleted it, typed another, deleted that too. What could she say that wouldn't sound self-serving? Finally, she settled on simple honesty. Grace, I know I have no right to reach out to you, but I need to apologize. You deserved a mentor who built you up instead of a boss who used you. You deserved credit for your brilliant research and ideas instead of watching me take credit for them. You deserved encouragement instead of criticism. I'm sorry for how I treated you. You've clearly thrived without me, which proves what I always suspected. You never needed me. You needed someone who believed in you, and I failed to be that person. I'm glad you found success despite me, not because of me. Sarah. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. 2 hours later, Grace responded. Thank you for this message. I won't lie. Working for you was difficult. But I learned what kind of leader I don't want to be. I heard about what happened with Novatech and then at Global Reach. I hope you're okay. We all make mistakes. What matters is what we do next. It wasn't full forgiveness, but it was grace. More than Sarah deserved. Over the next few weeks, Sarah made similar outreaches. To Marcus and Tund, her former team members who had witnessed her meltdown. To former colleagues she had undermined or betrayed in her climb to the top. To assistants she had berated and junior staff she had humiliated. Some people didn't respond. Some sent cold, brief acknowledgements. A few, like Grace, offered measured forgiveness. Each conversation, each apology, felt like removing a stone from a backpack she had been carrying for years. She would never be free of the weight completely, but it was getting lighter. At Okonkwo Consulting, Sarah continued to work differently. When Blessing presented a campaign idea that needed refinement, Sarah helped her develop it instead of taking over. When a junior consultant made a mistake on a client deliverable, Sarah fixed it privately rather than humiliating him in a team meeting. When Chidi praised Sarah's work, She made sure to credit the team members who had contributed. "You've changed," Chidi observed one afternoon, leaning against Sarah's desk. "When I hired you, I wasn't sure what I was getting. The woman from the video or something else. But you're different here than I expected." "I'm trying to be," Sarah said. "Some days it's harder than others. I catch myself wanting to snap at people, wanting to assert dominance, wanting to climb over others. But then I remember why I'm here." "Why are you here?" "Because everywhere else, I was someone I hated. Here, I'm learning to be someone I can live with." Chidi nodded. "Well, for what it's worth, I'm glad you're here. We landed 2 more clients this month, and the team is functioning better than it has in years. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." 1 month after her meeting with Joseph, Sarah received another unexpected call. "Ms. Chen? This is Amoka Nwosu from Zenith Foods." Sarah's heart jumped. Had something gone wrong with the account? "Ms. Nwosu, hello. How can I help you?" "I'm calling with an unusual request. Next week, we're having a company retreat for our marketing and sales teams. About 50 people total. We're bringing in speakers to talk about leadership, ethics in business, and building positive corporate culture. I'd like you to speak." Sarah was stunned. "Me? About what?" "About failure. About what happens when ambition corrupts integrity. About the real cost of success without values. About learning from public mistakes." Amoka paused. "I know it's a lot to ask. You'd be sharing your story in front of 50 strangers, including some who have probably seen the video. But I think our team needs to hear from someone who's lived the consequences of making wrong choices. Someone who's actually trying to change. Will you consider it?" Sarah's first instinct was to refuse. The idea of standing in front of 50 people and admitting her failures felt like self-flagellation. But wasn't that exactly the point? Real redemption required humility, even when it hurt. "Yes," Sarah said. "I'll do it." The following Thursday, Sarah drove to Zenith Foods headquarters in Acadia for their retreat. The venue was a conference center with a large auditorium. Sarah arrived early, her notes in hand, her stomach churning. Amoka met her in the lobby. "Thank you for doing this, Sarah. Just be honest. That's all we're asking for." Sarah was the second speaker of the day. The first had been a successful entrepreneur who talked about innovation and risk-taking. Then it was Sarah's turn. She walked to the podium, looking out at 50 faces, some curious, some skeptical, some clearly recognizing her from the video. She had no PowerPoint, no polished presentation. Just her story. "My name is Sarah Chen," she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. 6 months ago, I was a senior marketing executive at one of Lagos's top agencies. I made excellent money, managed major accounts, and was on track to become the youngest partner in company history. I was ambitious, driven, and successful by every conventional measure. I was also miserable and cruel. She told them about the hotel lobby, about kicking Joseph Okafor, about losing everything. But more importantly, she told them why it happened. I had convinced myself that success justified any behavior, that being ruthless was necessary, that treating people as tools or obstacles was just how business worked. I told myself I was being smart and strategic, when really I was just being afraid. She talked about watching her father lose his job, about how that fear had poisoned her approach to success. I thought the answer was to be harder, colder, more willing to step on others. I thought vulnerability was weakness and kindness was naivety. I was wrong about everything. Sarah described the aftermath, the firing, the public shame, the loss of identity. But the worst part wasn't losing my job or my reputation. The worst part was realizing I had become someone I didn't recognize. Someone my parents were ashamed of. Someone who couldn't look at herself in the mirror without feeling disgusted. She talked about Joseph's grace, about the process of making amends, about learning to work differently at Okonkwo Consulting. I can't undo what I did. I can't erase that video or take back those words or unkick that elderly man. But I can choose to be different going forward. I can choose kindness over cruelty. I can choose building others up over tearing them down. I can choose integrity over advancement." Sarah paused, looking at the faces in front of her. "Here's what I want you to understand. Success without values is just well-paid emptiness. Ambition without integrity is just dressed-up selfishness. Climbing the ladder by stepping on others means you end up at the top alone, and when you fall, and you will fall eventually, there's no one to catch you because you've alienated everyone on your way up." She concluded with something Joseph had told her. "You can be driven by fear or driven by love. Fear makes you protect yourself at others' expense. Love makes you sacrifice yourself for others' benefit. I spent years driven by fear. I'm learning what it means to be driven by something better." When Sarah finished, there was a moment of silence. Then someone started clapping. Others joined. It wasn't thunderous applause. Some people looked uncomfortable, others thoughtful. But it was something. During the break, several people approached Sarah. A young man named Ibrahim said, "Thank you for being honest. I've been working like you did, stepping on people, prioritizing results over relationships. Seeing where it led you makes me want to change course before it's too late." A woman named Folake admitted, "I saw the video when it went viral. I judged you so harshly. But hearing your story, understanding the fear behind it, I realized I have my own version of that fear. I'm not cruel like you were, but I'm cold, distant. I keep people at arm's length because I'm afraid of being hurt. Maybe we're all protecting ourselves in different ways." After the retreat, a mocker pulled Sarah aside. "That was powerful. Exactly what our team needed to hear. I have a proposition for you. Would you be willing to do more of these talks? Other companies, business schools, leadership conferences? Tell your story, help people understand the real cost of toxic ambition." "You mean public speaking? About my failure. About your failure and your growth. There's a hunger right now for authentic leadership, for people willing to admit mistakes and show what change looks like. You could fill that need." Sarah thought about it. A year ago, she would have been horrified at the idea of being known for her biggest mistake. But now she understood that her mistake might be the most valuable thing she had to offer, not as an example to follow, but as a warning sign and a roadmap for change. "I'll think about it," Sarah said. That weekend, Sarah drove to Port Harcourt to visit her parents for her mother's birthday. It was the first time she had been home in over a year. Her mother answered the door, her face lighting up. "Sarah, you came." Her father stood behind her mother, his expression cautious but warm. "Welcome home, daughter." The house was the same, modest but comfortable, filled with family photos and memories. Sarah's old room still had her childhood trophies and school certificates on the shelves. Over dinner, Sarah presented her mother with a birthday gift, a beautiful traditional Nigerian outfit from a local designer. Her mother cried with joy. Then Sarah gave her father an envelope. "What's this?" he asked. "The loan you asked for 5 years ago, plus 5 years of interest at current rates. For the restaurant." Her father opened the envelope and stared at the check. "Sarah, this is too much. I told you." "Dad, please. Let me do this. Not because you need it, but because I need to give it. Please." Her father looked at her mother, who nodded. "All right," he said quietly. "Thank you, Sarah." That night, sitting on the veranda with her parents, watching the neighborhood kids play in the street, Sarah felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Peace. Not the absence of struggle, but the presence of rightness. She was where she was supposed to be, with people who loved her despite her failures, learning to be someone worth loving. "Dad," Sarah said, "tell me about your students. The ones who still write to you." Her father's face brightened. He pulled out his phone and showed her messages from former students, some now doctors, lawyers, engineers. "This one, Emmanuel, he's a surgeon now. He grew up in poverty, but I helped him get a scholarship. This one, Grace, different Grace, she's running a non-profit for street children. I taught her in primary school. Sarah listened to story after story of lives her father had touched, of children he had believed in when no one else did, of the quiet, lasting impact of a teacher who cared. This is success, Sarah said softly. Not corner offices or six-figure salaries. This. Her father squeezed her hand. You're learning, daughter. Finally learning. 3 months later, Sarah was presenting a campaign strategy to a potential client when her phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. She ignored it, focusing on her presentation. Okonkwo Consulting was thriving. They had landed 6 new clients in 3 months, and the team had doubled in size. After the meeting, Sarah checked her voicemail. The message made her freeze. Ms. Chen, this is Patricia calling on behalf of Richard Thornton at Global Reach Advertising. Mr. Thornton would like to meet with you at your earliest convenience. Please call back to schedule a time. Sarah's hands trembled as she saved the message. Global Reach. Richard. What could he possibly want? She had been fired 5 months ago. That chapter was supposed to be closed. She called back, her heart pounding. Patricia's voice was professional but not cold. Ms. Chin, thank you for returning the call. Mr. Thornton can meet tomorrow at 10 a.m. if that works for you. That's fine, Sarah said, her mind racing. That evening, Sarah called Chidi to tell him about the meeting. I don't know what it means, she admitted. Maybe he wants me to sign additional paperwork. Maybe there's some legal issue I don't know about. Or maybe, Chidi said thoughtfully, he's seen how you've changed. Word gets around in this industry, Sarah. People know you're doing good work here. They know you spoke at Zenith Foods retreat. Maybe he wants to talk about the future, not the past. You think he wants to offer me my job back? I don't know. But whatever he's offering, I want you to remember something. You have a home here. Okonkwo Consulting isn't just a placeholder until something better comes along. We're building something real here, and you're a big part of that. Don't forget that when you walk into his office tomorrow. The next morning, Sarah dressed carefully, professional but not showy. She drove to Global Reach's offices, the same building she had left in shame 5 months earlier. Walking through the lobby felt surreal. Patricia greeted her warmly, which surprised Sarah. He's ready for you. Go right in. Richard stood when Sarah entered his office, gesturing to a chair. He looked older than Sarah remembered, more tired. Sarah, thank you for coming. I imagine you're wondering why I asked to see you. The thought crossed my mind, Sarah said carefully. Let me get straight to it. We're restructuring the executive team. The board has decided to create a new position, Vice President of Ethical Marketing and Corporate Social Responsibility. It's a senior role, second only to my own, with a significant salary and benefits package. I'd like to offer it to you. Sarah stared at him, certain she had misheard. You want to hire me back? After everything? Not hire you back to your old position. Hire you for a new role that didn't exist before. Sarah, the industry has changed. Clients care about values now, about companies that treat people well and contribute positively to society. Your story, your very public failure and very genuine transformation, actually makes you valuable in a way you weren't before. You want to use my failure as a marketing tool, Sarah said, understanding clicking into place. I want to use your growth, Richard corrected. Sarah, I've been watching what you've done over the past few months. The speech at Zenith Foods. The work at Okonkwo Consulting. The way you've quietly rebuilt relationships with former colleagues. You've become someone who understands both sides of this coin, the ruthless ambition that drives success and the values that make success meaningful. That's rare and valuable. What would the job actually entail? You develop and oversee all our CSR initiatives. You'd train staff on ethical marketing practices. You'd be the face of Global Reach's commitment to positive corporate culture. You'd work directly with clients to align their marketing strategies with social responsibility. And yes, sometimes you'd share your story to help others learn from your mistakes. Richard slid a folder across the desk. That's the offer. The salary is 40% higher than what you were making before. Full benefits, stock options, a path to partnership if you excel. It's a significant opportunity, Sarah. Sarah opened the folder, scanning the numbers. The salary was more than she had ever imagined making. The benefits were extraordinary. This was everything she had wanted 5 months ago, plus more. I need time to think about it, Sarah said. Richard looked surprised. Really? I thought you'd jump at this. 6 months ago I would have. But I've learned that not every opportunity is actually an opportunity. Sometimes it's a test. I need to make sure I'm making this decision for the right reasons. Fair enough. Take a week. But Sarah, I hope you'll seriously consider this. You've earned a second chance. Sarah left the building in a daze. As she drove back to Okonkwo Consulting, her mind churned through the implications. This was everything she had lost, handed back to her gift-wrapped. She could have her career back. She could prove to everyone that she had recovered from her public failure. She could be successful again, but this time with integrity. Or could she? Back at the office, Sarah sat in her small cubicle, so different from the corner office she had once occupied, and thought about what accepting Richard's offer would mean. She would leave Okonkwo Consulting, the company that had taken a chance on her when no one else would. She would abandon Chidi, who had believed in her. She would walk away from Blessing and Chioma and the other junior staff she had been mentoring. But she would also have resources to make a bigger impact. She could implement ethical practices at a major agency. She could influence how dozens of clients approached marketing. She could reach more people with her story about redemption and change. That evening, Sarah visited Joseph Okafor. She had been meeting with him monthly since their first lunch, and he had become something like a mentor to her. They met at the same restaurant, Mama F's Kitchen. After ordering, Sarah told him about Richard's offer. Joseph listened carefully, asking clarifying questions but not offering immediate judgment. "So," he said when she finished, "what do you want to do?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to say yes immediately. It's everything I worked for, everything I lost. But another part of me wonders if going back is actually moving forward." "Tell me about Okonkwo Consulting. What would happen to them if you left?" "Chidi would manage. He did before I got there. But we've built something good together. The team is strong. We're growing. My leaving would hurt, but it wouldn't destroy them." "And what about you? What would going back to Global Reach do to you?" Sarah thought about that. "I'd be working in the same industry, the same city, but in a completely different role. I wouldn't be climbing the ladder this time. I'd already be near the top. I'd be using my platform to teach values and ethics. It's actually aligned with who I'm trying to become." "But," Joseph pressed. "But I'm scared," Sarah admitted. Scared that being back in that environment will bring out the old Sarah. The one who valued success over people. The one who was ruthless and cruel. What if I can't resist the temptation? What if I become that person again? Joseph smiled. "Then you'll have failed, and you'll pick yourself back up and try again." "Sarah, you're acting like transformation is a destination. It's not. It's a daily choice. You don't become a good person once and stay that way forever. You wake up every morning and choose again who you want to be." "So you think I should take the job?" "I think you should pray about it, think deeply about your motivations, and then make whatever decision lets you sleep at night. But I'll tell you what I see. I see a woman who's terrified of her own power. You're not afraid of failing at Global Reach. You're afraid of succeeding. You're afraid that if you let yourself be ambitious again, you'll become the monster you used to be. But ambition isn't the problem, Sarah. Fear was the problem. Cruelty was the problem. Ambition channeled through values instead of fear? That could change everything. That night, Sarah barely slept. She made lists of pros and cons. She prayed, something she hadn't done since childhood. She thought about who she wanted to be and what kind of impact she wanted to have. By morning, she knew her answer. She called Richard first thing. "I've made my decision. I'm declining the offer." There was a pause. "May I ask why?" "Because I need to prove to myself that I can build something from scratch, not just return to what I had before. I need to know that I'm different not because circumstances forced me to be, but because I chose to be. Maybe someday I'll be ready for an opportunity like global reach. But not yet. I'm not done learning at Okonkwo Consulting." "I respect that," Richard said, and he sounded like he meant it. "The offer stands if you change your mind in the next few months. And Sarah, I'm proud of you. The woman who kicked that old man would have said yes without hesitation. The woman who just turned me down is someone worth knowing." After hanging up, Sarah walked into Chidi's office. "I need to tell you something." She explained about the offer and her decision to decline it. Chidi listened, his expression unreadable. "You're not leaving," he said when she finished. "No, I'm not." "Why?" "Because you gave me a chance when I didn't deserve it. Because I'm learning things here that I need to learn. Because leaving now would feel like I was using you as a stepping stone, and I'm done treating people that way." Chidi was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I want to offer you a partnership in Okonkwo Consulting. Equal ownership, equal decision-making, equal profit-sharing. I need a business partner, and I think you're becoming someone who could be that person." Now it was Sarah's turn to be stunned. "A partnership? Chidi, I've only been here 5 months. And in those 5 months, you've helped us grow more than we did in the previous 2 years. More than that, you've built a culture here where people want to work, where junior staff feel valued, where we can compete with the big agencies not by being ruthless but by being excellent. I don't want to lose that. So what do you say? Want to build something together?" Sarah felt tears in her eyes. "Yes. Yes, I'd be honored." They shook hands, and for the first time in her professional life, Sarah felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Not at the top of someone else's ladder, but building her own foundation on solid ground. 1 year after the hotel lobby incident, Sarah stood in front of a conference room filled with MBA students at Lagos Business School. She had been invited to speak about ethics in marketing as part of their leadership series. "Show of hands," Sarah said to the room of ambitious young professionals. "How many of you would do whatever it takes to succeed in business?" Almost every hand went up. "How many of you would step on someone else to get ahead if you had to?" About half the hands stayed up, some hesitantly. "How many of you have watched a video of a woman kicking an elderly man in a hotel lobby?" Every hand shot up. Sarah smiled grimly. That woman was me. She told her story, holding nothing back. The fear, the ambition, the cruelty, the consequences. But also the transformation, the hard lessons, the slow process of becoming someone different. "Here's what I want you to understand," Sarah said as she concluded. "Success isn't evil. Ambition isn't wrong. Wanting to achieve great things doesn't make you a bad person. But here's the question you need to ask yourselves. Who do you want to be when you get there? Because you will get somewhere. You're all smart, educated, driven. You'll have careers. You'll make money. You'll achieve things. But what kind of person will you be when you do?" A young woman raised her hand. "Ms. Chen, you lost everything and rebuilt from nothing. Do you regret what happened? Would you go back and change it if you could?" Sarah thought about the question carefully. "Yes and no. I regret the pain I caused Joseph Okafor. I regret the years I spent being cruel to colleagues and subordinates. I regret the relationships I damaged with my family. But do I regret the wake-up call? The forced transformation? The chance to become someone better? No. I needed to hit rock bottom to understand that success built on cruelty is just well-decorated failure." After the talk, Several students approached Sarah with questions and comments. One young man, around 25, waited until everyone else had left. Ms. Chen, I have a confession. I was at the Meridian Grand Hotel that day. I'm the one who recorded the video. Sarah's breath caught. She studied his face, seeing guilt and uncertainty. What's your name? Tund Adelique. I was there for a job interview. I saw what happened, and I pulled out my phone. I didn't think about what it would do to your life. I just thought people should see it. I thought you should face consequences. But then the video went viral, and I watched your life fall apart, and I started to feel like maybe I'd done something terrible. Did you? Sarah asked. I don't know. You deserved consequences for what you did. But did you deserve to have your worst moment broadcast to millions? Did I have the right to make that decision? Sarah gestured for him to sit. Tund, can I tell you something? That video saved my life. What? I was becoming a monster, one small cruelty at a time. If you hadn't filmed that moment, if there hadn't been public consequences, I would have continued down that path. I would have kept justifying my behavior, kept telling myself that success excused everything. That video forced me to see myself as others saw me. It destroyed my life, yes. But it also gave me a chance to build a better one. So, thank you. You're thanking me? Tund looked baffled. I'm thanking you for holding up a mirror, even though you didn't intend to. Accountability is a gift, even when it comes in painful packaging. They talked for another 30 minutes. Tund shared his own struggles with ethical questions in business, his fears about compromising his values to succeed. Sarah offered what wisdom she had gained, emphasizing that integrity wasn't a one-time choice but a daily practice. As Tund left, Sarah's phone rang. Victor Okafor's name appeared on the screen. They had stayed in distant but cordial contact over the past year, mostly through updates from Joseph. Mr. Okafor, Sarah answered. This is a surprise. Sarah, I'm calling because I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear it from me first. His voice was heavy. My father died 2 days ago. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. Oh no. Oh, Victor, I'm so sorry. What happened? Heart attack. Sudden. He was having lunch with friends, laughing about something, and then he just stopped. The doctors said it was quick. He didn't suffer. Sarah felt tears streaming down her face. I should have visited him more often. I should have told him what his grace meant to me. He knew, Victor said gently. Sarah, you need to know that you became important to him this past year. He talked about you often. About your transformation, about the work you were doing. He was proud of you. Proud. Sarah could barely get the word out. Yes. He said you reminded him of why he believed in people's capacity for change. He said forgiving you had taught him something about himself, that mercy isn't weakness, it's strength. Your story gave him hope about humanity. I thought you should know that. Sarah couldn't speak. She was crying too hard. The funeral is Saturday, Victor continued. I'd like you to come. If you're willing. My father would have wanted you there. Are you sure? I don't want to intrude. Sarah, you're part of his story now. A complicated part, but an important one. Please come. Saturday arrived grey and drizzling. The funeral service was held at a large church in Surelaire, packed with people whose lives Joseph had touched, former taxi passengers who remembered his kindness, neighbors he had helped, young people he had mentored, business associates of Victor's who had learned wisdom from the elder Okafor. Sarah sat in the back, feeling simultaneously like she belonged and didn't belong. When it came time for people to share memories, Sarah found herself standing and walking to the front before she consciously decided to do so. My name is Sarah Chen, she began, her voice shaking. Most of you probably don't know me. But I'm the woman from the video. The one who kicked Mr. Joseph Okafor in a hotel lobby a year ago. There was a collective intake of breath. Some people looked shocked. Others looked angry. But Sarah pressed on. I came here to tell you about the man I knew. Not the taxi driver or the sacrificial father or the wise elder you've all described, though he was all those things. I came to tell you about Mr. Joseph's capacity for grace, for forgiving someone who didn't deserve it, for seeing potential in someone who had shown only cruelty. Sarah described their lunch at Mama F's kitchen, the wisdom Joseph had shared, the monthly meetings that followed. He didn't have to forgive me. He didn't have to give me his time or his guidance. But he did, because that's who he was. He chose to invest in my redemption when he could have simply written me off. And in doing so, he changed my life completely. She looked at Victor, sitting in the front row. Mr. Okafor taught me that people are driven by either fear or love. That success without values is empty. That giving doesn't mean losing. It means gaining something greater. Those lessons guide me every day. They make me a better person, a better business partner, a better daughter. They're the foundation of everything I'm building now. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to honor what he taught me by extending the same grace to others that he showed me. Sarah returned to her seat, trembling. After the service, during the reception, dozens of people approached her. Some to thank her for her words. Some to share their own stories of Joseph's impact. And some to tell her quietly about their own struggles with cruelty, fear, and the hard work of transformation. Victor found her as the gathering was winding down. Thank you for speaking. It meant a lot. I almost didn't. I was afraid people would think I was making his funeral about me. You made it about his legacy, Victor corrected. About what he built in people's lives. That's exactly what a funeral should be. They stood in companionable silence for a moment. Then Victor said, I need to tell you something. I've been angry at you for a year. Even after my father forgave you, even after seeing your transformation, part of me wanted you to keep suffering for what you did to him. But today, listening to you speak, I finally understood what my father saw in you. He didn't forgive you because you deserved it. He forgave you because he believed in second chances, in redemption, in people's capacity to become better. And he was right. You became better. Your father gave me a gift I can never repay, Sarah said. Then pay it forward, Victor replied. That's how you honor him. Give someone else the chance he gave you. 6 months later, Sarah sat in her new office at Okonkwo and Chen Consulting. The partnership with Chidi had flourished. They now employed 20 people and had accounts with 15 major clients, including Zenith Foods, several banks, and, in a twist Sarah never expected, 2 of Novatech Industries' subsidiary companies. Victor had reached out personally to offer them the contracts, saying his father would have approved. Sarah's phone buzzed with a message from Grace Adeyemi. Hey Sarah, I have a friend who just got fired for some questionable behavior. She's struggling and looking for advice from someone who's been there. Would you be willing to talk to her? Sarah smiled and typed back. Of course. Have her call me any time. This was her life now, helping others navigate the consequences of their mistakes, offering the grace that had been shown to her, proving through her daily choices that people could change if they wanted to badly enough. That evening, Sarah video called her parents. They talked about ordinary things, her mother's garden, her father's retirement plans, the neighborhood gossip. Then her father said something that made Sarah's heart full. Your mother and I are proud of you, Sarah. Not because you're successful again, though that's nice, but because you're kind. Because you help people. Because you've become someone of character. That's the success that matters. After the call ended, Sarah sat looking out her window at Lagos's twinkling lights. She thought about the woman she had been. Desperate, fearful, cruel. She thought about hitting rock bottom in that hotel lobby. She thought about Joseph's grace, her father's forgiveness, the slow, painful process of rebuilding not just a career but a soul. She pulled out her journal and wrote, Dear younger Sarah, you thought success meant never being vulnerable, never admitting weakness, never depending on anyone's mercy. You were wrong about everything. Real success is being someone others can depend on. Real strength is admitting when you're wrong and changing course. Real wisdom is understanding that we're all broken in different ways, and grace is the only thing that holds us together. I'm grateful for your ambition. It got us here. But I'm more grateful for your downfall, because it taught us who we want to become. Keep choosing love over fear. Keep extending grace. Keep building something that matters. The corner office was never the goal. This was. With love, future Sarah. As Sarah closed her journal, her phone rang. An unknown number. She answered. Ms. Chen? My name is Blessing Okonkwo. Grace Adeyemi gave me your number. I made a terrible mistake at work, and I just got fired, and everyone hates me, and I don't know what to do. Grace said you might understand. Sarah felt a surge of recognition. This was someone at the beginning of the journey she had taken. Someone standing where she had stood a year and a half ago. Broken, ashamed, unsure if redemption was even possible. I understand completely, Sarah said gently. Tell me what happened, and let's figure out where you go from here. Because here's what I know, your worst moment doesn't have to define you. You get to choose what comes next. And if you're willing to do the hard work of transformation, I'll walk with you through it. That's what someone did for me. Now it's my turn to do it for someone else. As she listened to Blessing's story, Sarah thought about Joseph Okafor, about his belief in second chances and redemption, about his choice to see potential instead of just mistakes. This is how we honor you, Sarah thought. By passing forward the grace you gave us. By refusing to let one terrible moment destroy a whole life. By believing in people's capacity to change, even when they don't believe in themselves yet. The work of transformation never ended. Every day brought new choices, new temptations to slide back into old patterns, new opportunities to choose differently. But Sarah was learning that redemption wasn't a destination you reached and stayed at forever. It was a direction you kept walking, one small choice at a time, one act of grace at a time, one forgiven and forgiving moment at a time. She had kicked an old man in a hotel lobby. That would always be part of her story. But it wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning of something better, a life built not on fear and ambition, but on grace, integrity, and the transformative power of second chances. And that, Sarah had learned, was the only kind of success that actually mattered. The end. If this story moved you, please subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell. Share this video with someone who needs to hear about second chances and redemption. Drop a comment below telling us what lesson from Sarah's journey resonated with you most. Do you believe people can really change? Have you ever been given a second chance that transformed your life? We want to hear your stories. Remember, your worst moment doesn't define you. What defines you is what you do next. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.